Everyone, welcome back to One Page Ahead podcast, where I talk about the most popular self-help books, one chapter at a time, so you can get the conversational lesson without reading a single page. My name's Tsang, and in this season, season 1, it's all about atomic habits. We're on chapter 9, and this chapter is called The Role of Family and Friends in Shaping Your Habits. I do want to preface in this episode that all the episodes that I make are based off of what I understand from the chapter. If it's different from someone else's, good on ya. If you want a copy of the book, there's a purchase link for Amazon in the description. That being said, we're rolling right into this one. So this chapter starts off with a very interesting story about 3 sisters, the Polgar sisters. I think I'm saying it right. And they changed how the world views talent. It all starts with this guy named Laszlo Polgar, who believed that prodigies and geniuses are built, not born. So before the sisters could even read, Laszlo changed their home environment into this chess lab. He chose chess as the experimental topic. In their environment, it was all books about chess. There was posters about chess. There's constant battles and competitions around chess. It was built into their daily lives. Fast forward a few years, at the age of 4 years old, some of the sisters were already beating adults in chess, and all 3 sisters became world-class chess players. And I just want to focus on one thing here, which is super interesting. The little sister, Judith Polgar, became the youngest grandmaster at the age of 12 years old and held the title of the best female chess player for 27 years. And so that story tells us that they're not born special. It's because the environment and the family that played a big role into how they were brought up. And I think that's the point that James Clear has been trying to make the entire time, building systems and environments that can help us succeed. We're going to dive right into this chapter at this point. The first takeaway that I have is whatever habits seem normal in your culture, in your environment, in your society and community, those are the habits that you are likely going to do. And you've all heard this before. We as humans, we always want to fit in. We want approval. We want to feel respected. We want praise from others, because throughout evolution, we learn that as we stick in a pack, as if we're part of something, a tribe, that we will survive. And being casted out is basically a death penalty. So when we talk about habits, we don't choose our habits. We usually start by imitating what is around us. We follow habits from our friends, our family, our coworkers, our school, our society, our age group. And every one of those groups has different expectations and standards that we sort of morph into. So that's also one of the reasons why we probably act a little bit differently in our family group versus we act a little bit differently to our close circle versus how we act at school or at church or wherever we are, because there's sets of invisible rules that guides us and that we follow in order to fit in, whether we like it or not. One of the examples in the book is, it says if you are in an environment where everyone wears an expensive suit, you're likely going to fall into that behavior and purchase an expensive suit or do the same thing. Think about just one of the funny rolling jokes going around right now is finance bros, right? The Patagonia vests that they wear or the longer luscious hair that they have. You think about a finance bro and you have the starter kit in mind. And that's sort of what we're talking about here. When I think about my personal example, when I first started my professional career, the folks in the office were all into shoes, sneakers. They were sneakerheads. And so I actually started looking at sneakers too. I bought my first pair of Yeezys, not because I really cared about it, but it just felt normal at that time. And then when I got into sales, it was about watches. And so the similar topics we see throughout is that people in the same group are going to modify their cars, right? The same type of car, sports cars or trucks, watches, purses, whatever you name it. Those are habits within a group, and that's just a small example. And now what we're going to dive into now is the 3 groups that we imitate from. I'll give it to you right now, and then I'll explain to you every one of them and the special components within them. The first one is the close. The second one is the many. And the third one is the powerful. Every one of those groups has the power to make our behaviors more attractive, which is the second law. Starting off with the first one, the close. It is exactly what you think it is. It is proximity. How close are they to us physically? The people around us, think about our family, for example. How your parents argue, there is likely a component of that falls into how you argue with your spouse and friends and whoever. We imitate that. If our friends smoke, if our coworkers smoke, and we all go out for a smoke break, even though if you don't smoke at some point, it is very highly likely for people to succumb to that and start smoking as well. If my wife, all right, questions whether she's locked the door after we leave, I will start questioning that too over time. The closer we are to someone, the more likely it is for us to imitate their habits as well. One of the long time studies of 32 years tracked 12,000 people tells us that a person who has a close friend group and the close friend group is obese, the chances of that person becoming obese as well is 57%. It works the other way as well. We talked about this in a previous episode, in a previous chapter, around the closest 5 friends that you have likely define you as a person, and you are a blend of all 5 of them. And likely they're a blend of all 5 of you and each other. So what? Who cares? In this chapter, it basically tells us to build better habits. We need to join a group where their behaviors is something that we want to imitate on a daily, because new habits seem easier to achieve when you see people doing them daily. So think about group fitness, for example. I think about group fitness. I have a CrossFit background. When I went off on my own, I said, you know what? I don't need to do CrossFit anymore. I'm just going to go work out on my own. I didn't see the level of results that I did while I was in group fitness, CrossFit, or High Rocks, for example, folks that are in High Rocks now. The reason why they do it is because they have a culture, they have a bond, and they have similar interests. And so everything that they do seems normal. 10 years ago, if you said, I'm going to go travel with my friends for a fitness gig where we're just going to work out, you'd be like, that's a little bit weird. But now, because there's a big group and following, it just seems exciting and normal. So the tip that this book tells us for the close is that, number 1, join a culture that has a behavior that you want to emulate, and it makes it feel as if it is normal on the daily. But more importantly, number 2, as you do that, you have to have something in common with the group. It's kind of interesting because it's telling us to join a cult, basically. Well, not so much a cult, but it does make sense, though. Find your niche. Find the people that are going to make you continue to feel normal. Think about this for a second. So in the earlier chapters, we talked about identity. I am this person. What would this person do? So it guides our actions and principles, so that every time that we do the things, that identity that we say we are casting a vote into that bucket. In this chapter, it talks about we are that person. You are now part of a group and culture that all does the same thing. So it's easier for you not to fall off your path because you want to fit in. There's a side of us that wants acceptance from these people, and there's a level of motivation. So achieving a goal is fantastic for you, but in order to continue with that achievement, it's almost certain that we have to be part of a group. All right, let's talk about the second one. The second one's a little bit more brief, but very impactful as well, and it's called The Many. What does the many mean? And you might already know this. Whenever we're unsure about how to act or how to behave, we usually look at the people around us and say, all right, that sounds about right. Remember the first time that you went to a formal event? You're not used to wearing a suit or a dress or being in that event in that capacity, or a networking event. If you've ever been to one of those, you sort of look around and see how people behave, so you kind of fit right in. Like, what is everyone else doing, for example, and then how should I behave? The same thing that we do in this book, it talks about when we purchase something on Amazon, for example, let's say Atomic Habits. When I was choosing this book, I look at, all right, well, what are other people saying about this book? I'm looking for reviews to validate whether or not it's a safe choice for me. And a lot of influencers are going to say, be yourself, like break free from the matrix or blue pill, red pill, or whatever that is. And there's some truth to that around. There is a lot of internal pressures within that you and I both, and everyone has a lot of internal pressures in order to feel like they belong to something and for them to comply to certain groups, communities, society norms. And sometimes the feeling of being accepted and part of something is more important than doing the right thing. All right, we're getting really deep into this right now. So just taking a step back here. One of the things that the book talks about that resonates with me is that your current group, your current behavior, your current state, if you want to change truly change who you are, which means changing your habits that may go against some of the interests and norms of your group and your setting and your friends, you may also have to look for a different group or tribe because change is pain. We try to avoid pain, and going against the grain is much more difficult. It's like walking uphill. It's very easy to turn around and walk back down towards that group. We hear stories about that all the time. I was hanging out with the wrong people. I switched my friends, I gave up on this group, and I changed my life and I turned my life around. We hear that all the time. And I think this puts a perspective into it of if we want to do what we are set out to do, and if it's important enough, then we have to do what we don't want to do, which is leave the comfort zone and leave our comfortable tribe. I'm not saying disown your parents and disown your friends. I'm just saying maybe look for a niche that also values those things and then make that feel normal while you have your other friends, which make you feel normal in a different way. And now that brings us to our last point here, which is number 3, and it is imitating the powerful. All right, let's be honest here, right? We're influenced and we're drawn towards people that we look up to based off of who they are and how they are and what they have. And then so we start looking at how they behave. And most of the time we then start to imitate some of those behaviors, hoping that we can also earn the same level of respect, status, approval. So you see people out there and they'll treat themselves to luxury goods, and that's perfectly fine. And then there's also people out there that splurge on luxury goods to feel a certain way, because we know in society that luxury goods give us an artificial sense of acceptance and status. So the example that I can think of, there's a lot of alpha male role models within social media for younger kids, and what I start to see is behaviors that are emulated from these influencers. Whether you believe them to be good or bad, I don't care. But the truth is, we start seeing many these younger kids and teens, they try to emulate that because they see that as success and they want to imitate that in hopes of getting the feeling of acceptance of people around them. All right, what about on a smaller scale, less extreme? Think about your boss, for example, right? Usually our bosses or people that are higher up in the corporate chain or corporate ladder or whatever environment, we start to look as a role model to what success can look like in that environment. So you're going to start to notice there are people that will start mimicking communication styles of their bosses or their higher ups, because it's a natural thing for humans to imitate the people that we envy or put a status and value to. As I say that, I really think back to the earlier chapters where I talked about understanding your unconscious behaviors so that you can be more conscious of them. And I think it is the same thing here, where we are constantly altering how we do things, what we say, based on the feedback of the group of people that we're in front of. And we ask ourselves, what do others think of me? And as much as we want to tell ourselves, I don't care how people think of me, I think there is usually a scale of, I don't give a shit about anything people say, I am me, versus I care about every action that I take and how people see me. And then we're usually somewhere in between that scale where we're constantly altering our behaviors based off of that question that we ask ourselves. What do people think of me? As to wrap up this chapter here, and you start to think about the next steps of building bulletproof systems and habits, there is a component of the environment that you're in that we talked about versus the people that you're with as well. And you knew that already, but to put these in words into different sections of the book and categories that you can think about, that is what I think this book does really well. It starts to help me at least question some of the things that I do and the people that I'm with. And I say, which part of it is innately me? And which part of it I do because I'm with a certain group of people. And if you can list those things out for yourself, I think you are well on your way on the journey of becoming the best version of yourself. And that brings us to the end of this chapter, chapter 9 of Atomic Habits. And this chapter is called The Role of Family and Friends in Shaping Your Habits. We're almost halfway done this book. And if you've enjoyed this chapter, if you learned anything, do me a favor, hit that like button, comment and say that you're on this journey with me. I'm actually surprised. It's been a couple weeks since I've been doing this, and I've got close to 70 subscribers, and that's a big deal for me. That means that there's 70 people that is also on this journey, but a couple people that have said that they're on this journey with me. And so if this is something that you want to do as well, you want to continue bettering yourself, but you just don't really enjoy reading, and listening to a audiobook helps you fall asleep more than learning, I think this would be a good cause for you. And I don't want you to miss chapter 10 because it sounds like it's going to be a phenomenal chapter. It's called How to Find and Fix the Causes of Your Bad Habits. Thank you everyone that's been part of this. I'll catch you in the next one, and best of luck on your journey. Take care.